The wind cut across the quiet New Jersey street like a blade that night, rattling the thin branches and carrying the soft, frightened cries of an 8-month-old baby. Emily Carter stood on the concrete steps, one hand clutching her swollen belly, the other holding Noah close to her chest. The front door had just slammed shut behind her, shaking the old porch light that flickered weakly above her head. All around her, scattered across the cold ground, were tiny shirts, baby socks, nursing pads, and her own clothes tossed out like trash by the man who vowed to protect her. Jason's voice still rang in her ears. "Get out, both of you. I'm done carrying dead weight." His words hit harder than the winter air. She had heard him angry before, but tonight something was different. His eyes burned with a strange mix of panic and excitement, like a man who had already chosen a new life and wanted the old one gone before anyone could stop him. Inside the house, lights turned on one by one. A suitcase rolled across the hardwood floor. A high-pitched laugh, too carefree, too rehearsed, echoed through the living room. Chloe Reed, the woman Emily had suspected for months, but never dared to confront. Now she didn't need proof. The proof had just dragged its pink carry-on bag over the same floor where Emily used to rock Noah to sleep. Her breath shook as she bent down to gather a few tiny onesies, but the cold made her knees feel like they would split apart. She shouldn't have been lifting anything in her condition. 8 months pregnant, exhausted, iron levels low, barely sleeping, but she still tried to protect her children from the cold, from humiliation, from the nightmare unfolding around them. A neighbor's curtain moved. Mrs. Johnson. Emily saw her silhouette, but didn't blame the woman for not stepping outside. No one wanted to get involved in a family fight at night. Besides, Jason had a way of looking unhinged when he got angry, a way of making people think twice. Emily's phone buzzed weakly in her pocket, its cracked screen lighting up. 12% battery. She didn't know who to call. Her mother had passed away. Her friends had drifted away after she moved for Jason's job. And her father, she hadn't spoken to him. The shame of choosing the wrong man had built a wall so high she didn't think anyone could climb over it. Her breath fogged in the air as she whispered, "Noah, Mommy's here. It's okay, sweetheart." But her voice cracked, betraying every fear she had buried for months. Then, just as she tried to lift the baby bag from the ground, she heard an unfamiliar engine growl at the end of the street. Not a neighbor's car. Not an Uber. Something heavier. Something official. Headlights swept slowly across the sidewalk, catching the scattered clothes in a harsh white beam. A black SUV with government plates approached the house. It slowed, then stopped. The doors remained closed for a moment, as if the people inside were assessing the scene. The pregnant woman clutching her infant, the house behind her glowing with betrayal, the bitter cold wrapping around her like punishment. Emily's heart pounded. She didn't know who it was, and when the back door opened, everything began to shift. The man stepping out was the last person Jason ever expected to see. 5 minutes earlier, before the black SUV rolled onto the quiet street, Emily had still been inside the house, trying to stop Jason from shouting loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He paced across the living room like a man searching for a reason to explode, brushing past the suitcase Chloe had pushed near the door. Noah sat in his playpen, startled by every slam of Jason's hand against the counter. The smell of Chloe's perfume lingered in the air, too sweet, too new, too wrong inside a home built from Emily's sacrifices. Jason grabbed the dresser drawer and dumped it upside down, letting bras, maternity leggings, and baby blankets fall like a storm onto the hardwood floor. "You think you own this place?" he yelled. "You think you get to snoop through my phone and question me like I'm some idiot?" Emily held her belly and tried to speak calmly, but whatever she said only fed his anger. Chloe stood near the kitchen doorway, pretending to look uncomfortable, yet her smile kept flickering whenever Jason wasn't looking. Emily whispered, "Jason, please, the baby." He cut her off. "Don't pull that card again. You always hide behind that belly. I'm done with your drama." Then he grabbed a pile of Noah's clothes and marched to the front door. The cold air rushed in as he tossed everything outside. Emily felt her legs weaken. She reached for Noah, who started crying louder, sensing the chaos around them. Chloe stepped closer to Jason and touched his arm. "Maybe don't do this while the baby—" Jason raised a hand, not to hit her, but to silence her. "Don't tell me how to handle my family. I'm fixing my life tonight." Emily froze. Fixing? As if she and the children were the problem he needed to remove. Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor, peeked through her blinds. Emily saw the movement but didn't call for help. She didn't want the neighborhood gossip mill spinning even harder. She tried to pick up a baby bottle from the coffee table, but Jason snatched it from her hand, opened the door again, and threw it onto the step. The bottle rolled down into the yard, landing against a tree root. Emily felt humiliation crawl up her neck. This wasn't just anger. This was staging. Jason wanted Chloe to see him, take control, to prove he was the kind of man who didn't let a weak wife drag him down. Something Emily had once heard him complain about on a phone call he thought she didn't hear. Then Chloe's phone buzzed. She lifted it and smirked at the screen. "Our driver's almost here. Should be 5 minutes." "Driver?" Emily didn't even know Chloe had planned to stay the night. Jason straightened himself and looked around the house like he was assessing what needed to be erased. "Good. I want everything perfect when we start over." Emily felt the floor tilt under her feet. "Start over," she repeated. Jason didn't answer. He walked to the nursery, grabbed Noah's diaper bag, opened the front door once more, and hurled it into the yard. Emily gasped and rushed outside, clutching Noah to her chest. The cold slapped her across the face. Chloe stood behind Jason, framed in the doorway, arms folded, as if observing a performance. Jason leaned against the doorframe. "Yeah. Start over. Without you." Emily felt something inside her crack. Not her heart, something deeper, something breaking open. And that was the exact moment headlights appeared at the end of the street, the beam widening, sweeping across her fallen clothes. Then, 3 years earlier, before any betrayal, before diapers and night feedings and cracked phone screens, Emily Carter had believed in the kind of love that could fix anything. Back then, she was a 24-year-old community college student, working the late shift at a Starbucks just outside Newark. She was the girl who wrote customers' names with extra hearts on the cup, the girl who kept her textbooks tucked beneath the counter so she could study in between orders. She dreamed of transferring to a 4-year school, maybe becoming a teacher, maybe building a life that didn't depend on anyone else's temper. Jason Carter had walked in on a rainy night wearing a button-down shirt that didn't quite fit and confidence that did. His hair was wet, his tie crooked, and he laughed loudly at nothing in particular. Emily remembered the way he leaned against the counter and said, "Rough day. I could use the prettiest barista here to save it." She blushed. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She didn't notice the arrogance behind his smile. She only saw charm and ambition. He talked about Manhattan like it was his second home, even though he lived in a cramped apartment across the river. He talked about success as if it were waiting right outside the door for him to claim. He ordered a caramel macchiato and stayed for 2 hours, asking about her classes, her dreams, her family. Emily couldn't stop talking. She liked how he listened, or seemed to. When she mentioned her father's strict expectations, Jason smirked and said, "Sounds like you need someone to show you how to live for yourself." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. A few weeks later, they were inseparable. Jason brought her small gifts. A keychain from Times Square, a second-hand copy of The 48 Laws of Power he claimed would help them build a future. A cheap necklace, he said, looked expensive. Emily believed every word. When he held her hand and talked about escaping the boring routine of life, she felt like she was stepping into a movie. But small cracks began forming early. Jason didn't like when she studied late. He said he missed her. Then he didn't like her talking to male classmates. He said he felt disrespected. Then he didn't like her working long shifts. He said other men looked at her too much. Emily made excuses. He just cares, she told herself. He just loves deeply. The first real warning came the night he convinced her to skip a midterm to go out to dinner. She protested this exam would determine her grade, but Jason insisted. "If you love me, you'll come," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. She caved. Afterward, she cried quietly in the passenger seat while Jason hummed to the radio, unaware he had cost her a full semester. When she discovered she was pregnant with Noah, she stared at the test for 10 minutes straight, shaking. Jason reacted with excitement so big, so theatrical, she mistook it for devotion. He begged her to move in. He said college could wait. He promised they'd be a family, that he'd take care of everything. Emily wanted so badly to believe him. She told her father she was leaving school, expecting anger, and got it. Robert Miller warned her that she was tying her life to a man she barely knew. Emily hung up on him. She thought love was enough. It wasn't. Months later, when Noah was born, Jason held the baby with trembling hands and whispered promises Emily hoped were true, but responsibility weighed on him faster than love held him. He grew impatient, restless, resentful. Emily tried harder. She cooked, cleaned, budgeted, apologized for things she didn't do, stayed quiet to avoid fights. And now, standing in the freezing front yard with Noah in her arms, she realized something painful. The red flags she had ignored had always been warnings painted in bright, unmistakable light. And at that exact moment, as she knelt to pick up a tiny blue sock from the cold ground, the black SUV stopped directly in front of the house. The shift from ordinary husband to polished Manhattan dreamer happened slowly at first, then all at once, like a thin crack spreading across a window before the whole thing shattered. After Jason landed a job at the tech firm in Midtown, he came home wearing a confidence that didn't belong to the same man who once lived off Emily's tips from Starbucks. He talked about office towers on Park Avenue, expensive lunches his coworkers bragged about, and the view of the Manhattan skyline, he claimed, made him feel closer to the life he deserved. Emily wanted to share his excitement, but every new detail widened the distance between them. When Jason bought a used Mercedes he could barely afford, he stood in the driveway admiring it for almost an hour. Emily, holding Noah on her hip, asked whether they should save the money instead. Jason rolled his eyes. "You think successful men drive Toyotas?" he snapped. The comment stung, not because of the insult, but because he seemed embarrassed to be seen with the life they had built together. Soon he began staying late at the office. He said it was networking. Emily imagined crowded bars, coworkers clinking glasses, Manhattan lights reflecting off polished floors. She didn't imagine Chloe at first. She pictured Jason being responsible, ambitious, finally stepping into the career he had always wanted. She packed him snacks, left encouraging notes in his bag, sent pictures of Noah learning to crawl. Most nights, he didn't respond. One evening, she found a receipt from a restaurant overlooking the river in Manhattan. 2 entrees, 2 cocktails, a dessert she knew Jason hated. When she asked about it, he grabbed the paper from her hand and said, "Work dinner. God, you always assume the worst." He avoided her eyes, and Emily pretended not to notice, but the truth showed itself anyway. It always does. Jason's suit smelled like a floral perfume she didn't own. His phone buzzed late at night with notifications he turned face down. Emily remembered the night she reached for his phone to silence it while he slept on the couch. A message flashed. "Next time, stay the night." When she gasped, Jason jolted awake and ripped the phone from her hand. He shouted until Noah cried in terror, accusing Emily of being paranoid, dramatic, ungrateful. Then he stormed into the kitchen and knocked over a chair. Still, Emily stayed. She stayed because she was pregnant again. She stayed because she believed families could heal if both people tried. She stayed because she didn't want her children to grow up in a broken home the way she had. And she stayed because Jason had a cruel talent for apologizing just enough to keep her hopeful. He would bring home flowers from a street vendor, kiss her forehead, promise to do better. For 1 or 2 days, he actually would. Then the cycle repeated. Chloe entered the picture through Jason's stories first. "A new girl at work," he said casually. "Young. Smart. Ambitious." Emily felt something shift inside her each time he mentioned her name. Chloe this, Chloe that. Eventually, Chloe became the coworker he spent the most time with. Emily didn't blame the girl, at least not then. She blamed the city, the pressure, the hunger Jason had for a life bigger than the one he shared with her. The night Emily finally saw a selfie of Jason and Chloe together, his hand brushing her hair, her smile too intimate to misunderstand, her entire body went cold. She knew the truth then, even before Jason threw her clothes into the yard. The night Chloe officially stepped into Emily's world, it didn't come as a shock. It came as confirmation. A cruel, undeniable confirmation. Emily had been sensing it for months, the late nights, the perfume, the excuses, but it wasn't until she heard Chloe's laugh echoing through her own living room that everything inside her finally cracked. It began earlier that day. Jason had left for work looking unusually sharp, wearing the suit Emily had ironed the night before, though he didn't bother thanking her. He'd stood in the doorway adjusting his tie, muttering, "Big night. Important people," as if preparing for an award ceremony rather than another night avoiding his responsibilities. Emily, 8 months pregnant and exhausted, spent the day chasing Noah around the house, wiping down countertops, trying to ignore the stabbing pain in her lower back. She had planned to make Jason's favorite dinner, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, but he texted at the last minute, "Don't cook, I'll eat out." No explanation, no apology. Hours later, Noah finally fell asleep on her chest. Emily dozed off too, worn down by the weight of everything she was trying to hold together. When the sound of keys jangling at the front door jolted her awake, she blinked at the clock. Almost 10 p.m. Jason walked in, smelling like expensive cologne and something floral. But he wasn't alone. Chloe Reed followed him through the door, stepping inside like she had rehearsed this moment. She wore a fitted dress, her hair curled perfectly, her lipstick fresh. She held a suitcase, an actual suitcase, as if she were arriving home. Emily froze, still holding Noah. Her heart hammered against her ribcage. Jason avoided her eyes. "We need to talk. Now." Emily tried to keep her voice steady. "Why is she here?" Chloe raised her chin, as if she deserved an explanation too. Jason said this place needed a woman who actually supports his life, not someone who drags him down. Emily felt her stomach twist. "This is my home." "Not anymore," Jason muttered. Chloe stepped farther into the living room, her heels clicking like an announcement. She scanned the house, Noah's toys, Emily's maternity pillow, the framed photo from their wedding. Her nose wrinkled. "It's smaller than I imagined." Jason's jaw tightened. He wanted Chloe to see him as powerful, decisive, someone who had control. And Emily, tired, swollen, still in her stained sweater, represented every insecurity he had tried to bury. "Jason," Emily whispered, "Noah is right here. Can we do this another time?" "No," he snapped. "I'm done pretending. Chloe deserves better. I deserve better." Emily's voice trembled. "And what do our children deserve?" Jason didn't answer. Instead, he walked into the nursery and began grabbing Noah's clothes from drawers, tossing them into a pile like unwanted laundry. Chloe leaned against the wall, watching, her expression unreadable. "Stop," Emily yelled, for the first time raising her voice. "Jason, please." He didn't stop. He grabbed the diaper bag, the baby blanket Emily's mother had crocheted before she died, and marched to the front door. Chloe followed him, lightly touching his arm. "Maybe don't stay out of it," he hissed. He flung the blanket onto the porch, then the clothes, then Emily's own maternity coat. The cold air flooded in, biting at Emily's bare arms. She stood frozen, clutching Noah, unsure whether she was witnessing her marriage ending or her life collapsing. When Jason stepped back inside, he stared at her with an expression she had never seen before, not anger, not guilt, but relief, like removing her from his life was a victory. "Get out," he said calmly. "You and the kids. Tonight." Emily's knees buckled. "Jason, I'm 8 months pregnant." He shrugged. "Not my problem anymore." And then, behind him, Chloe zipped her suitcase with a clean, satisfied sound, like someone sealing the end of Emily's world. The moment the door slammed behind Jason, the night felt colder than the winter air itself. Emily stood on the front steps, Noah crying against her shoulder, the wind slicing through her thin sweater. Her scattered clothes lay across the concrete like bits of a life that had been torn apart in minutes. She tried to breathe steadily, but each inhale hurt, as if her chest were shrinking. She lowered herself to her knees, not because she wanted to, but because her legs simply couldn't hold her anymore. The world around her felt muted. The porch light flickered. A dog barked somewhere far away. A train horn echoed in the distance. Everything sounded normal, except for the sound of her life collapsing. She picked up a tiny pair of Noah's socks with trembling hands, and her tears dropped onto the fabric, darkening it in small spots. Inside the house, she heard music. Chloe had put something on, something upbeat, loud enough to drown out the reality on the porch. Emily pressed a hand over her belly, feeling the baby shift. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The apology wasn't for the children. It was for herself, for ignoring the signs, for staying too long, for believing Jason would grow into the man he pretended to be. A door creaked across the street. Mrs. Johnson peeked out again, clutching a robe tightly around her shoulders. She hesitated, then stepped onto her porch. "Emily?" she called softly. "Honey, are you all right?" Emily nodded quickly, wiping her face. "I'm fine, just a fight. It'll calm down." She didn't want anyone to know how bad it really was. Shame wrapped around her like ice. She didn't want to be the woman the neighbors whispered about. Mrs. Johnson lingered another second. "You sure? It looks—" "I'm sure," Emily cut in, forcing a smile that felt like it cracked her skin. "I'll be okay." The older woman slowly retreated, uncomfortable but unsure how to help. Emily didn't blame her. No one wants to step into a war zone they don't understand. The cold seeped deeper into Emily's bones. She knew she needed to get Noah somewhere warm. She fumbled for her phone. The screen cracked, battery at 7%. She had no one to call. Her closest friend had moved to Boston. Her mother was gone. And her father was the last person she wanted to hear her cry. He had warned her about Jason years ago, and Emily had hung up on him. She had chosen love over logic, and she was the one who had to live with the consequences. Still, her finger hovered over his contact name. She didn't press it. Instead, she wrapped Noah tighter against her chest and forced herself to stand. She grabbed the diaper bag, shaking off the dirt, and slung it over her shoulder. Her breath came out in white puffs. She stepped down to the sidewalk with no plan, no destination, just the instinct to move. A sudden wave of dizziness washed over her. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled again. She crouched, clutching her belly, terrified the stress was triggering something dangerous. Noah cried louder, sensing her fear. She rocked back and forth, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's got you. I promise. I've got you." Lights flickered from inside the house, and she heard laughter, Jason's rough laugh mixed with Chloe's delicate one. That sound sliced deeper than any insult. Emily closed her eyes. She wasn't just losing her marriage tonight. She was losing the version of herself who believed things would get better. The truth pressed down on her. She had stayed because she hoped Jason would love her the way he loved being admired. When she opened her eyes again, headlights curved onto the street. Not Jason's car, not a neighbor. A large black SUV approached slowly, engine humming with authority, gliding toward the house like it already knew where it was going. And as the vehicle rolled to a stop in front of her, Emily felt a chill that wasn't from the cold. The SUV's engine rumbled low, steady, nothing like the nervous idling of a neighbor's sedan. Its headlights spread across the lawn, illuminating the baby clothes Jason had tossed like discarded memories. Emily squinted through the brightness, clutching Noah closer as the vehicle rolled to a complete stop. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear the hum of the engine cutting off. For a moment, no one moved. Then the rear door opened with a soft, heavy click. A polished black shoe stepped out first, followed by a long, dark wool coat. The man who emerged stood tall, solid, his hair dusted with gray at the temples. Emily's breath hitched. She knew that silhouette. She had memorized it long ago, even though she hadn't seen it in nearly 2 years. Her father, Robert Miller, a state official known for his quiet authority and strict moral compass, stood on the sidewalk staring at her as if he weren't sure the scene in front of him was real. "Emily?" His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even stern. It was something far worse, shattered. Emily tried to stand, but her legs wobbled. "Dad," her voice cracked. She didn't know whether she felt relief or shame. Maybe both. Mostly both. He stepped forward immediately, the harsh winter wind whipping the edges of his coat. His eyes swept over the scattered clothes, the broken bottle, the diaper bag smeared with dirt. Then he looked at Noah crying, red-cheeked from the cold. His jaw tightened, a storm building behind his calm expression. "What happened?" he asked, though the truth was laid bare across the ground. Emily swallowed hard, tears stinging her throat. "Jason, he threw us out." She couldn't say more. The words felt too heavy, too humiliating. Her father didn't press. He simply nodded once, sharply, like he had just made a silent promise to himself. Behind them, the house door swung open. Jason appeared in the doorway, Chloe hovering behind him. Jason froze mid-step when he saw who stood on the sidewalk. "Sir," he blurted out, voice cracking, panic flashing across his face. For all his swagger, Jason had always been intimidated by Robert. Not because of his title, but because the man saw through him from day one. Robert didn't even glance at him. He kept his gaze on Emily. "Come here," he said gently, placing a steady hand on her back. She leaned into him as he helped her to her feet. He took Noah into his arms, cradling the child against his chest with a tenderness that made Emily's breath shudder. Jason stepped forward, forcing a smile that looked painfully fake. "Mr. Miller, this looks bad, I know. Emily and I just had a misunderstanding. You know how pregnancy makes." Robert turned his head, and the look he gave Jason could have frozen fire. "You threw my daughter and my grandson onto the street." His voice was flat, emotionless, but deadly. Jason opened his mouth, then closed it. His hands shook slightly. Chloe lurked behind him, her expression caught between guilt and fear. Robert didn't yell. He didn't curse. He simply walked past Jason, stepped up onto the porch, and stared him down from inches away. "I warned her about you," he said softly, which somehow felt louder than shouting. "And now you've proven every single word right." Jason swallowed hard. "This isn't your business." Robert smirked, cold, controlled. "It is now." He turned, guiding Emily toward the SUV. The driver opened the back door, and Robert placed Noah gently inside before helping Emily in. She felt the warm air blast from the heater and nearly sobbed at the relief. As Robert prepared to join them, he paused, looked over his shoulder, and delivered the sentence that made Jason's face drain of color. "You have no idea what you've started tonight." Then he climbed into the SUV, and the door shut with a decisive thud, not just ending the moment, but beginning a war. The SUV moved through the quiet New Jersey streets with a smooth, commanding glide, the kind of ride Emily hadn't felt in years. She sat in the back seat beside Noah, who had finally stopped crying and rested against her chest, his small breaths warming her skin. The heater filled the cabin with a soft hum, thawing her frozen fingers, but nothing could warm the knot in her stomach. She felt fragile, like a cracked window holding back a storm. Her father sat across from her in the back row, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. He wasn't looking at her, he was staring at the dark road ahead, hands clasped tightly together, as if trying to keep his emotions under control. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with years of distance and unspoken words. Emily's voice barely rose above a whisper. "You didn't have to come here." Robert finally turned his eyes toward her. "Yes," he said quietly. "I did." She swallowed, her throat burning. "But you didn't even know." "I knew enough," he cut in, but not harshly. "A colleague mentioned seeing you at a clinic last month. Alone, pregnant, carrying a baby and another child on your hip. I called you that night, but you didn't answer." Emily looked down at her hands, ashamed. "I didn't know what to say." He leaned forward slightly. "You could have said anything, even silence. I just needed to hear your voice." Her eyes blurred with tears. She never wanted her father to see her broken like this. She had worked so hard to prove to him that choosing Jason wasn't a mistake, that she could build a life on her own terms. And now she sat here, homeless, heartbroken, 8 months pregnant, holding a baby while her clothes lay scattered on the street like garbage. Robert softened. "Emily, I'm not here to judge you." That was all it took. Her tears spilled silently, sliding down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed. The driver turned onto the main road toward Manhattan, the skyline glowing faintly in the distance. Emily stared at it through the window, remembering how she used to imagine living in one of those tall, glittering towers with Jason. But now, the city looked sharp and cold, like the edges of broken glass. Her father took a slow breath. "Jason's been reckless for a long time. I've heard things." Emily looked up. "What things?" Robert hesitated, not because he doubted, but because he hated confirming what she already feared. "He's been under internal review at his company. Financial misconduct, questionable accounts, and a rumor that he used someone's identity to create a secondary login." Emily's stomach dropped. "Whose identity?" Robert didn't answer. He didn't need to. Emily clutched Noah a little tighter. "He wouldn't," she whispered, even though deep down she knew Jason was capable of hurting her in ways she hadn't even discovered yet. The SUV approached the Lincoln Tunnel. Lights flashed along the walls as they descended, the echoes of cars bouncing around them. Robert finally spoke again. "Tonight wasn't a mistake, Emily." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "It was the moment you finally saw who Jason really is. And the moment he realized he has no control left." Emily let the words sink in. They scared her, but they also steadied her. As they emerged from the tunnel, Manhattan's skyline rose before them, bright, sharp, almost unreal. Her father pointed ahead toward the Upper East Side. "I have a place you and the kids can stay. Safe, warm, no one will bother you there." Emily exhaled shakily, relief washing over her like warm water. Then her father added quietly, but with steel in his voice, "And tomorrow we start taking your life back." The SUV turned onto a quiet Upper East Side block, lined with tall brownstones, their windows glowing softly against the cold night. Emily had never been to this part of Manhattan except once, years ago, when she and Jason got lost and drove through the neighborhood pretending they belonged there. Now she was arriving not as a tourist, not as someone dreaming of a different life, but as a woman who had just lost everything and didn't know where she fit anymore. The vehicle stopped in front of a building with a discreet entrance and a doorman who stepped outside immediately. He greeted Robert with respectful familiarity, then glanced at Emily with gentle concern. "Long night?" he asked quietly. Emily could only nod. Robert placed a supportive hand on her back. "Let's get you upstairs." Inside, the lobby was warm, modern, and filled with the quiet hum of late-night heaters. Emily felt momentarily out of place, standing barefoot in worn-out leggings with Noah on her hip, her hair unwashed, her eyes swollen from crying. She clutched the diaper bag close, ashamed of the dirt smeared across it. The elevator ride was silent, but comforting, the kind of silence that didn't demand explanations. When the doors opened onto the 12th floor, Robert led her down a hallway to a furnished apartment whose door he unlocked with a keycard. The moment Emily stepped inside, she froze. Soft lighting, clean couches, a small desk with a MacBook Pro, a stocked kitchen, a crib already set up in the corner of a bedroom, a bottle warmer, extra blankets, even a set of newborn clothes still folded on a table. She blinked. "Dad, what is all this?" "I've been preparing," he said quietly. "Just in case." Emily's throat tightened. How long had he been worried? How long had he suspected she was living in quiet misery while pretending everything was fine? He took Noah gently from her arms and placed him in the crib, where the baby immediately curled up and sucked his thumb, exhausted from the chaos. Emily brushed her hand over his back, her heart aching with relief and guilt all at once. Robert stood near the window, looking out at the city lights. "I wanted to come sooner. I should have. But you kept pushing me away, and I thought maybe you really were happy." He paused. Tonight proved I was wrong. Emily sank onto the edge of the bed, feeling suddenly small. "I didn't want you to say I told you so." "I would never say that," he murmured. She looked up. "You did say it. The day I married him." He turned toward her, his eyes softening. "And I've regretted it since." Parents say stupid things when they're scared of losing their children. Emily wiped her nose with the back of her hand, embarrassed. I thought you didn't want anything to do with me. Robert walked toward her and actually knelt, so they were eye level. Emily, I have wanted you in my life every day. I just didn't know how to reach you without pushing you further away. A tear slipped down her cheek. Her father took her hand gently. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You loved someone who didn't deserve it. That's not a failure. That's humanity. Emily exhaled shakily. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. Get some rest, Robert said, standing. Tomorrow morning, I'll call my attorney. We'll start documenting everything, every message, every receipt, every witness. Emily nodded, overwhelmed but grateful. And Emily, he added, pausing at the doorway. Jason thinks tonight was power, but it was the moment he lost. The door clicked softly behind him as he stepped into the hall, leaving her alone with her sleeping son, the warm apartment, and the faint hum of the city outside. For the first time in months, Emily allowed herself to believe this thought. Maybe her life wasn't ending. Maybe it was beginning. Morning light crept through the blinds, soft and golden, brushing across Emily's face as she opened her eyes. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The room was warm, quiet, safe. It felt unreal after the chaos of the night before. Then she saw Noah asleep in the crib beside her bed, his tiny hands curled near his face, and the memories came crashing back. Jason's shouting, the cold porch, the SUV pulling up. Her chest tightened. She sat up slowly, pressing a hand to her lower back as the baby in her belly shifted. 8 months pregnant. Homeless. Heartbroken. But alive. And no longer alone. A knock sounded at the door. Emily, her father called softly. You awake? She managed to quiet. Yeah. Robert stepped inside wearing a neatly pressed shirt and holding 2 paper cups from a nearby cafe. Decaf latte for you, he said, setting it on the nightstand. And a regular for me. I figured you didn't need any caffeine right now. The smell alone made her eyes sting with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. He pulled a chair from the corner and sat beside her. How are you feeling today? Emily exhaled. Like I woke up from a nightmare I still have to live through. Robert nodded. Then we'll get through it one step at a time. She looked at him, really looked. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper, his shoulders heavier. He wasn't just worried, he felt guilty. The thought hurt her more than Jason's betrayal. Before she could speak, her father reached into his briefcase and placed a folder on her lap. We start with this. My attorney's team put together emergency paperwork. We're filing for temporary custody and protection today. Emily blinked. Protection? You and the children were endangered. Jason threw you onto the street. That alone is grounds. He took a breath. But there's more. Her pulse quickened. More? Robert hesitated. His company contacted me this morning. Emily froze. They contacted you? He nodded. They're investigating multiple accounts opened under an employee's spouse. They won't confirm anything, but they asked if you were aware of certain financial transactions. Emily's mouth went dry. Dad. He used my name. It looks that way. A wave of nausea rolled through her. She pressed a hand to her stomach. How could Jason stoop so low? Bad husband, bad partner, but this was criminal. Robert leaned forward. Emily, listen to me. You are not at fault. You didn't sign anything. You didn't authorize anything. They're building a case, and they need your cooperation. She shut her eyes. Jason is going to blame me. He'll say, I'm lying. I don't care what he says, Robert responded sharply. I care what we can prove. There was a firmness in his voice she hadn't heard since childhood, the voice of a protector. Before she could reply, her phone buzzed from the nightstand. She glanced at the screen. Jason. The name alone made her chest tighten. Robert reached over and picked up the phone before she could. Don't, he said gently. Not now, not today. He turned off the screen. Emily swallowed. He's going to be furious. He already is, Robert replied, because he's losing control. Men like Jason only act brave when they think no one will challenge them. Emily looked down at her hands. I should have left sooner. Her father shook his head. You left the moment you were finally allowed to see the truth. That's courage. She wiped her eyes. What do we do next? Robert stood, straightening his coat. We meet with the attorney at 10. Then we start documenting everything. After that, Jason will receive a notice he won't be expecting. Emily nodded, strength forming slowly inside her. And Emily, her father said, pausing at the doorway, tonight, you and the kids are sleeping here again. This is your space until you decide you don't need it. She felt her throat tighten. Thank you, Dad. He gave her a rare, soft smile. I wasn't there when you fell, but I'm here now. And I'm not leaving. As the door closed behind him, Emily exhaled deeply. For the first time in years, she felt the smallest spark of something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. By 10 o'clock, Emily found herself sitting in a glass-walled conference room on Park Avenue, wrapped in a soft gray cardigan her father had bought for her that morning. Snow flurries drifted outside, dusting the sidewalks and making Manhattan look almost gentle, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Noah sat in a portable bassinet beside her, kicking happily, unaware of the storm swirling around his mother's life. Robert sat to her left, calm and composed, while across the table sat his longtime attorney, Marlene Shaw, a sharp, silver-haired woman with glasses perched at the tip of her nose, the kind of woman who could probably stare down a judge and win. Marlene flipped through the documents. Emily, before we move forward, I need you to understand something. What Jason did last night isn't just cruel, it's dangerous, and the courts take this very seriously. Emily nodded, clasping her hands to keep them from shaking. I know, I still can't believe it happened. Marlene softened slightly. Abusers often show their true selves when they think the victim has nowhere to go. Last night he thought you were powerless. She tapped the folder. Today, we prove him wrong. Robert cleared his throat, trying not to let emotion show. We will do whatever is necessary. Marlene continued. We're filing for an emergency protective order and temporary sole custody. Given your pregnancy and what he did, the judge won't hesitate. Emily swallowed hard. What about the financial stuff? The accounts under my name. That, Marlene said, is where things get interesting. She slid a printed email across the table. Emily recognized the company logo from Jason's firm. Internal audit is nearly finished. They can't legally give details yet, but the implication is clear. Jason used your personal information to open unauthorized portals and claim bonuses he wasn't entitled to. Emily felt cold. So, he committed fraud, pretending to be me? Yes. And when this becomes official, the company will cooperate fully with the investigation. Emily leaned back, dizzy. He'll blame me. He'll say I knew. And he'll lose, Marlene replied firmly. He has a history of controlling behavior. He kicked his pregnant wife and infant child into the street. No jury, no judge, no investigator will believe he handed over accounts to you out of goodwill. Robert placed a comforting hand on Emily's arm. You're safe now, she exhaled. I hope so. Marlene opened another folder. Now, about last night. We need everything. Every text, every photo, every bank statement that looked strange. Emily pulled out her cracked iPhone. I took screenshots months ago. I saved them to a backup because I thought he'd delete them. That was smart, Marlene said. Emily handed over the evidence. Photos of hotel receipts, Chloe's messages, bank statements with charges she never made, timestamps showing Jason's late-night transactions. Each piece felt like reliving a humiliation, but Marlene treated them like ammunition carefully, methodically. Then she asked, Is there anything else we should know? Anything off? Emily hesitated. Yes. Robert looked at her. Emily, tell her. Her voice trembled. There was a night. A few weeks ago. Jason grabbed my arm. Not hard enough to bruise, but it scared Noah. He wouldn't let me leave the room. Marlene's expression darkened. That will matter in court. Emily felt small. I didn't tell anyone. You're telling us now, Marlene said gently. That's enough. Before Emily could gather herself, the door opened and an assistant stepped in. Miss Shaw, There's a call for Miss Carter. From Jason Carter's attorney. Urgent. Emily's stomach twisted. He already hired a lawyer? Marlene smirked. Of course he did. Men like him sprint to legal defense the second they lose control. Robert's jaw tightened. You don't have to take the call. Emily inhaled slowly. I want to hear what he's trying to do. Marlene pressed the speaker button. A cold male voice filled the room. This is Attorney Briggs representing Jason Carter. We have reason to believe Emily Carter has unlawfully left the marital home and intends to restrict access to the child. Emily felt her pulse jump. Briggs continued. We are filing for emergency shared custody. Emily's breath caught. He finished. And if she does not return the child voluntarily, we will pursue full custody. Robert stood so fast his chair scraped across the floor. Try it. Marlene leaned forward, voice like steel. Mr. Briggs, your client has made a grave error. And by the time we're done, he will regret every second of last night. Emily stared at the phone, trembling. As the call disconnected, everything suddenly felt real. The war had begun. Emily left the law office with her heartbeat still thundering from the call. The cold air outside hit her cheeks like tiny needles, snapping her back into her body. She pushed the stroller with one hand, while her other steadied the weight of her pregnant belly. Her father walked beside her, protective and silent, his jaw set in a firm line she hadn't seen in years. Manhattan traffic roared around them, but Emily felt as if she were walking underwater, every sound muffled by fear. Don't let that phone call shake you, Robert said finally as they waited for the crosswalk light. Jason is bluffing. Emily shook her head. He sounded so sure. He actually thinks he can take Noah from me. Robert stopped walking. He won't. His voice carried a force that made her look up. I promise you. They reached the Upper East Side apartment. Inside, the warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. She sank onto the couch, exhaustion pulling her down. She wasn't just tired, she was drained in a way that felt bone deep. Noah napped in the crib. The city hummed outside. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. Her father set a brown cardboard Amazon package on the coffee table. This came this morning. I ordered it the minute I knew you were coming here. Emily frowned. What is it? Open it. She tore the strip. Inside was a baby monitor with 2 cameras, an extra thick sleep sack, and a copy of Atomic Habits. Emily let out a weak laugh. Really, Dad? You need rest, routine, something that reminds you your life isn't defined by him. Emily touched the book's cover gently, her breath unsteady. She wasn't sure she believed in routines or healing or self-improvement right now, but the gesture mattered. Robert continued quietly. I wasn't there to help you build the life you thought you wanted, but I'm here to help you rebuild the life you deserve. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. Thank you. Get some sleep. I'll make lunch. After he stepped into the kitchen, Emily leaned back and stared at the ceiling. She couldn't rest. Her mind replayed the attorney's voice. We will pursue full custody. Jason trying to take Noah, the same man who threw his clothes into the yard and told her to get out, the same man who left her sobbing on the porch while his mistress dragged in her luggage. A deep ache spread across her chest, not sadness this time. Anger, not loud, explosive anger, but something steady, focused, the kind of anger that builds strength instead of destroying it. Her phone buzzed beside her. She flinched. A text, not from Jason, from an unknown number. I'm sorry, I didn't know he'd do that to you. C. Emily stared at the letter. C. Chloe. Before she could decide whether to respond, her father emerged with 2 bowls of soup and set them on the table. Eat, he said firmly. Emily forced down a few spoonfuls. The warm broth soothed her throat, but not her nerves. Then her father added, Emily, there is something else you should know. Her stomach dropped. What? He sat down slowly, weighing every word. Jason didn't just cheat. He bragged to some of his coworkers about you, about controlling you. Someone reached out to my office anonymously last week, asking if you were safe. Emily's heart stopped. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't have proof, Robert said softly. And I didn't want to accuse him without facts. I know you loved him once. Loved him once. Past tense. The truth of that hit her harder than she expected. She whispered, "He used my name for fraud. He put our son in danger." "And now he wants custody?" Robert nodded. "Yes. Which means we fight back harder." Emily looked at her hands. They weren't trembling anymore. "He's not taking my children," she said quietly. Her father's eyes warmed with pride. "Good." Then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed again, this time with a message that froze the blood in her veins. "Jason, you left me no choice. If you don't return Noah tonight, I'm filing full custody in the morning." Emily sat very still. She felt the shift inside herself, subtle but undeniable. Fear was gone. Something stronger took its place. Emily stared at the message glowing on her cracked screen, the words burning into her mind. "If you don't return Noah tonight, I'm filing full custody in the morning." Her pulse hammered in her ears. For a long moment she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The apartment felt too quiet, like the air itself was waiting for her reaction. She set her phone down slowly, her hands cold despite the warmth of the room. Her father looked up from the dining table. "Another message?" Emily nodded. "From him?" She swallowed hard. "He's threatening full custody. Again." Robert let out a slow, controlled breath, the kind he used when fighting the urge to break something. "He's panicking. He thinks intimidation will scare you back into that house." "It used to," Emily whispered. "But not anymore," Robert said firmly. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. She braced herself. Another attack from Jason, another manipulation, another attempt to crush her spirit. But the notification wasn't from him. "Unknown. You don't know me, but I think Jason is hiding more than you realize. Please don't go back there. I can explain." Emily frowned. "Now what?" Robert stepped closer. "Let me see." She handed him the phone. He read the message twice, eyes narrowing. "We need to be cautious. Could be someone trying to stir trouble." Emily shook her head. "Or someone who knows something." He nodded slowly. "Maybe, but not tonight. Tonight we focus on fortifying your case." Emily sat down at the small dining table, exhaling shakily as she rubbed her temples. "It feels like everything keeps getting worse." "Sometimes," Robert said, sitting beside her. "Things get louder before they break open." A knock sounded at the door. Emily stiffened. Robert stood instantly, posture straightening with protective instinct. He glanced through the peephole, then relaxed slightly. "It's the building attendant," he said before opening the door. The doorman stood there holding a stack of mail and a small envelope. "These were left downstairs earlier. One's addressed to Miss Carter." Emily took the envelope, her name written in unfamiliar handwriting. "Thank you," she murmured. As soon as the door closed, she opened it. A flash drive slid out. Her heart skipped. There was a small sticky note attached. "For your protection. Don't show Jason." Robert's expression sharpened. "What is that?" I don't know. Should I open it?" He considered. "Let's use my laptop. Zephyr." They moved to the desk. Robert inserted the drive and opened the only file on it. A video. Emily felt her body tense. The footage was grainy, taken from a restaurant's security camera. She recognized it instantly, the upscale Manhattan restaurant where she once found a receipt Jason insisted was for a work dinner. But this footage was time-stamped, and it told a story she never imagined. Jason sat in a booth with Chloe beside him, not across from him like colleagues. Beside him, his arm around her shoulders, her hand on his thigh. Emily's stomach churned. But it wasn't the cheating that mattered now. It was what came next. Jason leaned in close to Chloe and said something. The camera had no audio, but the subtitles at the bottom did. "Emily's name is on the account. If anything happens, she takes the fall, not me." Emily's breath left her body. Robert froze. Then the subtitles continued. "Once she has the baby, I'm done. You'll move in. She'll be too tired to fight." Emily clamped a hand over her mouth, tears spilling over. Her father's hands curled into fists. "This," Robert said, his voice deadly calm, "is the leverage we needed." Emily wiped her eyes. "Who sent it?" "Someone who wants the truth out." Robert replied. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Check the flash drive. There's more coming. Emily felt a chill run down her spine, but not from fear, from awakening. Something inside her, something she thought Jason had crushed, was rising. Slowly, steadily, fiercely, Robert placed a hand over hers. Emily, we are going to win. No, she whispered, voice steady, strong. We're going to destroy him. Jason Carter felt invincible the morning after throwing his pregnant wife and infant son into the cold. He woke up in the bed he once shared with Emily, sunlight spilling across the sheets, Chloe curled beside him like a trophy he had finally earned. He stretched, smirked, and checked his phone, expecting messages from coworkers, praise from Chloe, maybe even panic from Emily. What he didn't expect was silence. Not a single missed call, no tearful texts, no begging, no threats. No, I'm coming home. Nothing. As he stared at his screen, irritation flickered in his chest. Chloe moved beside him and murmured, "Morning. You okay?" Jason forced a confident grin. "Yeah, just waiting for the show to start." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "What show?" "Oh, she'll reach out," Jason said, tossing the phone onto the nightstand. Emily always caves, always. But an hour later, as he paced around the kitchen, drinking coffee and scrolling through his notifications, irritation sharpened into something uglier. Why hadn't she called? Why hadn't she begged? Why hadn't she tried to come back? Chloe watched him with a cautious expression. Maybe she's staying with a friend. "She doesn't have friends," Jason snapped. Chloe flinched. He softened his tone. "I mean not close ones. She's too isolated." Chloe didn't respond. Something uncomfortable tugged at her expression, but she turned away. Jason didn't notice. 2 hours later, he received a call from an unknown number. He answered quickly, assuming it was Emily's surrender. "Jason Carter," a male voice asked. "This is Officer Kellman with the Manhattan District Office. We need you to come in for questioning regarding an internal investigation." Jason froze. "Wait, what investigation? I'm in the middle of something personal." "It's not optional," the officer replied. "You received a notice 2 days ago." Jason swore under his breath. He had ignored the email, assuming it was a routine audit. "Fine. I'll come in later today." "You'll come now," the officer corrected, then hung up. Jason stood there, gripping the phone until his knuckles whitened. Chloe stepped closer. "What is it?" "Nothing," he lied. "Just work stuff. Stupid." But she didn't look convinced. Jason drove to Manhattan, nerves buzzing beneath his arrogance. He rehearsed excuses in his head. Maybe he could blame a coworker. Maybe he could blame Emily. Maybe he could talk his way out of it, like always. But when he entered the office, he froze. 2 investigators sat waiting. A laptop was open on the table. A paused security video on screen. Jason felt the air leave his lungs. No. Impossible. They shouldn't have that footage. Nobody should. The taller investigator gestured to the chair. "Sit." Jason did. The screen played. Him. With Chloe. With his arm around her. With his whispering mouth close to her ear. With the exact incriminating line displayed in subtitles. "Emily's name is on the account. If anything happens, she takes the fall." His stomach dropped. He forced a laugh. "That's out of context." "There's no context," the investigator said. "You used your wife's identity for fraudulent bonus claims. That's a felony." Jason panicked, but pride pushed through. "Let me talk to my lawyer." "You'll need one." Meanwhile, back at the Upper East Side apartment, Emily sat on the couch, feeding Noah, when her phone buzzed again. Unknown. Phase 2 uploaded. Check your email. Emily's heart kicked. She opened her email and gasped. It was another file. This time from inside Jason's office building. Him shredding documents. Him bragging to a coworker about ditching the deadweight wife. Him joking about upgrading to a Manhattan girl. Emily handed the phone to her father, her hands trembling not with fear, but with adrenaline. Robert's voice thickened. "This is more than enough to protect you. It's enough to bury him professionally." Emily whispered. "Who is sending these?" "I don't know," Robert said, "but whoever it is wants Jason exposed." Across the river, Investigators questioned Jason for over an hour. Each answer trapped him deeper. His arrogance crumbled. Eventually, he snapped. "Emily must have set this up," he spat. "She stole my accounts. Your wife was sleeping on a sidewalk last night," the investigator said sharply. "Your mistress confirmed it. You're done blaming her." Jason went silent. For the first time, truly silent. He left the building pale, shaking, his Mercedes locked in the company garage pending investigation. He ordered a car home, pulse pounding, fury boiling. Emily hadn't called. Emily hadn't begged. Emily hadn't come back. Instead, she had declared war. He grabbed his phone and typed furiously, "Jason, this isn't over. You will regret doing this to me." But even as he hit send, a chill crept up his spine. For the first time in his life, Jason Carter realized the thing he feared most. He was losing. The courthouse in Bergen County looked colder than the winter air outside tall gray walls, wide stone steps, and glass doors that reflected every fear Emily carried with her. Robert walked on one side of her, Marlene on the other, their presence forming a shield she desperately needed. Even with Noah strapped to her chest in a soft carrier, even with her swollen belly slowing her steps, Emily felt something different today. A steadiness, a pulse of courage under her skin. Inside, the hallway buzzed with murmured conversations. Lawyers in dark suits walked briskly. Clerks sorted paperwork behind glass windows. The scent of old wood and floor polish floated in the air, almost comforting in its seriousness. "Remember," Marlene said quietly as they approached the family courtroom, "you did nothing wrong. Jason will try to twist the story. Let him. We have evidence, we have witnesses, and we have truth." Emily nodded, though her heart was thudding so loudly she wondered if anyone could hear it. When the courtroom door opened, Emily froze. Jason was already inside. He wore his best suit, navy blue, tailored too tightly. His hair slicked back, his jaw freshly shaved, but his eyes were wild, frantic. He stood abruptly when he saw her, his gaze sweeping over her face. Noah's sleeping form, her father. Something hateful flashed inside him. Chloe wasn't with him. Neither was anyone who cared about him. Jason's attorney, Briggs, whispered something to him, tugging at his sleeve, but Jason didn't sit. He glared at Emily with disbelief, almost insult. "You really brought your father?" he hissed across the aisle. Robert stepped forward, voice like stone. "I'll be wherever my daughter needs me." Briggs intervened quickly. "Mr. Carter, sit." But Jason didn't sit. Instead, he leaned forward, whispering harshly, "You think you can embarrass me? You think you can take my son?" Emily didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She simply looked at him, really looked, and realized something. Jason was scared. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Jason finally sat, though stiffly, his knee bouncing under the table. The judge reviewed the case file, flipping through documents that now contained screenshots, receipts, and thanks to the anonymous source, the damning video of Jason admitting he put accounts under Emily's name. Jason didn't know the video was in the file. "Not yet," the judge began. "We are here to address emergency custody and protective measures for Mrs. Emily Carter and minor child Noah Carter." Briggs rose first. "Your Honor, my client has been cut off from his home, his child, and..." Marlene stood before he finished. "With respect, Your Honor, Mrs. Carter was forcibly removed from her home while 8 months pregnant and holding an infant. We have witness testimony, photographic evidence, and..." Briggs cut in. "That's exaggerated. There was an argument, but..." "Argument," Marlene snapped. "Mr. Carter threw an infant's belongings into the street. He locked his pregnant wife outside in freezing temperatures, and then attempted to replace her with his mistress." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Jason surged to his feet. "That woman is lying." The judge lifted a hand sharply. "Sit down, Mr. Carter." Jason sat, his face turning red. Marlene tapped the folder. "Additionally, Your Honor, we have evidence Mr. Carter used Mrs. Carter's identity to access financial portals at his company. That investigation is ongoing." Briggs shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor," but the judge raised a brow. "Mr. Briggs, is your client under investigation for fraud?" Briggs hesitated. An internal review. Yes. But, the judge turned to Jason. Is that true? Jason swallowed, jaw clenched. It's a misunderstanding. Marlene didn't wait. Your Honor, we'd like to present a video recording from a Manhattan restaurant. Jason's head snapped toward her. What video? The courtroom quieted. Marlene clicked play. The footage appeared on the screen. Jason. Chloe. His arm around her. Then his damning line, clear in subtitles. Emily's name is on the account. If anything happens, she takes the fall. Gasps filled the room. Jason lunged forward. You can't use that. It's illegal. It's... The judge slammed the gavel. Order. Jason's chest heaved, his face pale. Briggs sank lower in his seat, defeated. When the room calmed, the judge looked at Emily. Mrs. Carter, do you feel safe returning home with Mr. Carter? Emily exhaled, voice steady. No, Your Honor. Not for myself. Not for my children. The judge nodded, then turned to Jason. Mr. Carter, effective immediately, temporary sole custody is granted to Mrs. Carter. You will have supervised visitation twice a week. You are barred from the marital home pending further review, and any attempt to contact or intimidate Mrs. Carter will result in immediate sanctions. Jason stared at the judge like the words were knives. His empire, his control, crumbled in seconds. Emily held Noah closer. For the first time in her marriage, she wasn't scared of Jason. She was free. Jason stormed out of the courthouse like a man fleeing a burning building, though the only thing on fire was his pride. Snowflakes clung to his expensive suit as he yanked open the door and stepped into the cold, muttering curses under his breath. His attorney hurried after him, trying to keep up, papers flying from his briefcase in the wind. Jason, slow down. Don't tell me what to do, Jason snapped, nearly slipping on the icy step. His breath fogged in the air as he paced back and forth in front of the entrance, his face twisted with disbelief. I lost custody. Sole custody. To her, over one stupid night? Briggs held up his hands. It wasn't one night. They hit you with fraud evidence, child endangerment, witness testimony. That video, Jason hissed, eyes wild. Where did it even come from? Who filmed that? Who gave it to Emily? Briggs hesitated. Someone on the inside, apparently. Jason's eyes narrowed. Chloe. He pulled out his phone and dialed furiously. Chloe didn't pick up. He called again. Straight to voicemail. His jaw tightened. She used me, he muttered. But beneath the anger lay something uglier. Fear. Real fear. His job was on the line. His freedom might be next. And Emily, the woman he had mocked, manipulated, dismissed, had just beaten him in court without even raising her voice. He slammed his phone back into his pocket. This isn't over, Briggs sighed. Jason, listen. The best thing you can do now is stay calm and cooperate. Any retaliation could cost you everything. I already lost everything. Briggs didn't argue. He simply stepped back, letting Jason stomp toward the rideshare waiting nearby. Meanwhile, across the river, Emily returned to her father's apartment feeling like she had run a marathon while carrying the world on her back. Her legs trembled, her head throbbed, but somewhere beneath the exhaustion, a new strength pulsed through her, quiet but unbreakable. As soon as she stepped inside, Robert placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You did well today. Better than you think. Emily sank onto the couch and exhaled slowly. I thought I was going to fall apart. But you didn't, he replied. And that matters. She set Noah in his crib, running her fingers through his soft hair. He slept peacefully, unaware that a judge had just changed the course of his life. Robert sat beside her. There's something else we need to discuss. Emily tensed. More bad news? Not exactly. He pulled a folded document from his coat pocket. This came while we were at the courthouse. Emily opened it, her eyes scanning the page. A notice from the tech company. A formal suspension for Jason. A warning of possible termination pending criminal charges. Her breath caught. It's really happening. It is, Robert said. And this is only the beginning. Emily let the paper fall to her lap. She didn't want revenge. She wanted safety, stability, a future for her children. But deep inside, A small, quiet part of her savored the justice beginning to unfold. Her phone vibrated again. She braced herself, expecting another threat. But the message was gentle, careful, respectful, unknown. There's something you need to know about Jason. Something that will help your case even more. Emily stared at it, and then another message came in, seconds later. Unknown. I'm not your enemy. I'm someone he lied to. Please let me tell the truth. Robert glanced over. Who is that? Emily hesitated. I think it might be Chloe. Robert's jaw tightened. Be careful. I will. But Dad, if she knows something big, we need it. Before he could respond, another message arrived. Unknown. I know where Jason hid the documents he shredded. Emily's heart raced. She typed back, where? 3 dots flashed on screen, then a reply. His office, bottom drawer, under the false panel. Emily's pulse quickened. Dad, if that's true, then another buzz. Unknown. Emily felt her stomach twist. Dad, he wasn't just going to leave me. Robert's expression darkened. He was going to frame you. Emily swallowed hard, but instead of fear, she felt fire. He picked the wrong woman to break, she whispered. Her father nodded, eyes fierce. We finish this. Emily barely slept that night, not because of fear, but because her mind was alive in a way it hadn't been in years. Every time she closed her eyes, the same realization burned through her. Jason hadn't planned to divorce her. He hadn't planned to share custody. He hadn't even planned to kick her out in a moment of rage. He had planned to replace her, to move Chloe in, to leave the country, and to let Emily take the fall for the money he stole, a plan that Cole didn't form overnight. He had been building it for months, maybe longer. And now, Emily knew. Now, she could fight. At dawn, the city hummed awake. Delivery trucks groaned down the street. A neighbor's dog barked faintly through the hallway walls. Emily sat at the small kitchen table holding a mug of warm milk, trying to steady the rise and fall of her breath. Noah slept peacefully in the crib beside her, bundled in the new sleep sack her father had ordered. The baby she carried shifted gently under her hand, giving a soft thump, as if reminding her she wasn't alone. Her father emerged from the guest room in a pressed shirt. Big day, he said, pouring coffee. You up for it? Emily nodded. More than yesterday. He gave her a proud smile, the kind she hadn't seen since she was a teenager. Good. Marlene said the company investigators want to meet this morning. They have new evidence. A chime interrupted him. Emily's phone lit up. Another message from the unknown number. Unknown. I'm ready to talk. Please. Before he finds me. Emily's stomach tightened. Dad. It is her. It's Chloe. Robert exhaled, rubbing his forehead. We move carefully. She could help us, or cause trouble. Emily typed slowly. What do you want? The reply came instantly. To tell the truth. I didn't know what he was doing, I swear. Emily's jaw clenched. She remembered Chloe standing in her living room that night. Perfume thick in the air, suitcase in hand, watching Jason throw her out. She remembered the faint smile on Chloe's lips, the sparkle in her eyes. It was hard to believe this woman suddenly cared. Emily typed again. Why now? Because he scared me last night. He said, if you came after him, he'd clean up loose ends. I think he meant me. Emily and her father exchanged a look. This wasn't a game. Chloe wasn't bluffing. Emily asked, what proof do you have? A long pause. Then a video arrived. Emily clicked it. The footage showed Jason pacing in his living room, hair disheveled, eyes wild. Chloe stood by the counter filming secretly. Jason ranted, smashing a glass into the sink. If they come for me, I'll burn everything. She thinks she's taking my kid. I'll make sure she loses them both. And if Chloe opens her mouth, she's done. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Robert's jaw locked. He threatened her, and indirectly threatened you. Emily whispered, Dad. I need this. He nodded. We'll bring it to Marlene today. Another message buzzed through. Please, I'm at a cafe near Midtown. I'm scared to go home. Will you meet me? Just you, not your dad. Robert shook his head immediately. Absolutely not. But Emily knew something her father didn't. Chloe was more afraid of Jason than she was loyal to him. And scared women told the truth. We need her, Emily said softly. Robert hesitated. If you go, I'm coming too. Not inside, not at the table, but close enough to intervene. Emily nodded. It was fair. She typed, I'll come. 2 hours later, Emily stepped into a small midtown cafe, its windows fogged from the heater inside. Snow fell lightly outside, dusting the sidewalk. Chloe sat in the far corner, hood up, sunglasses on despite the dim lighting. She looked nothing like the confident woman who once strutted into Emily's home. Her hands shook as she lifted her coffee cup. When she saw Emily, her eyes widened with relief and shame. I didn't know, Chloe whispered before Emily even sat down. Jason told me you were unstable. That you hit him. That you were leaving with another man. I was stupid. I wanted to believe him. Emily said nothing. Chloe swallowed hard. But last night, when he threatened me, I realized he's dangerous. Really dangerous. Why help me now? Emily asked quietly. Chloe blinked rapidly, tears forming. Because he was going to let you take the fall. And maybe even worse. Emily's heart clenched. Chloe reached into her bag and slid a small envelope across the table. There are copies of everything, she whispered. His secret accounts, his flight confirmations, his burner phone number, his backup drive, everything. Emily stared at the envelope, small, plain, unassuming. But inside it lay the truth, the power, the weapon she needed. Why give this to me? Emily asked. Chloe's voice trembled. Because you're the mother of his children, and he was willing to destroy you. Emily swallowed. Thank you, she finally said. But Chloe shook her head. Don't thank me, she whispered. Just finish him. Emily left the cafe with the envelope clutched tightly in her hand, the cold air slicing across her cheeks as she stepped onto the midtown sidewalk. Her father waited at the corner, pretending to read a newspaper but watching every step she took. When she reached him, she didn't speak. She simply held out the envelope. He looked at it, then at her, and nodded without asking questions. Together they walked toward the parking garage, snow crunching softly beneath their shoes, the city's noise fading behind the thrum of determination pounding in Emily's chest. She wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. Inside the SUV, Emily opened the envelope carefully, as though the truth inside was fragile. But the contents were anything but fragile. Flight confirmations to Mexico under Jason's name, scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Bank statements showing transfers into offshore accounts. A note in Jason's handwriting listing passwords. And a second flash drive. Emily inserted it into her father's laptop. Video files appeared, the kind that made her blood run cold. Jason in his office, shredding documents. Jason practicing a speech about escaping drama. Jason laughing while saying, she'll never see it coming. Each file chipped away her fear. Robert exhaled slowly. This is enough to destroy him in court, professionally and criminally. Emily stared at the laptop screen, feeling a strange mix of dread and relief. He knew exactly what he was doing, she whispered. He wasn't overwhelmed. He wasn't confused. He planned every step. Her father closed the laptop. And now we show the world who he really is. Emily felt the baby kick, as if reminding her that she had something worth fighting for, something worth protecting. They drove silently to Marlene's office, each turn sharpening Emily's resolve until she felt unbreakable, forged by truth. Marlene watched the footage with no expression, which somehow terrified Emily more than shock would have. When the last video ended, the attorney leaned back slowly, tapping her pen against the folder. He's finished, she said calmly. This is fraud, identity theft, destruction of evidence, abandonment, endangerment, and attempted evasion. Emily swallowed. Will he go to prison? Marlene folded her hands. If the investigation continues at this pace, very likely. Emily looked down, emotions twisting inside her. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted protection. but she also wanted him to face the consequences he had tried to make hers. Robert placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This doesn't just protect you, it protects your children." Emily nodded, tears pricking her eyes not from sadness, but from clarity. Marlene added, "We'll turn everything over today, and I'll request an emergency injunction to prevent him from leaving the state. He'll be under supervision within 24 hours. Emily exhaled shakily. Good. For the first time since the night she was thrown out, she felt the ground beneath her feet solidify. She wasn't walking on fear anymore. She had leverage, proof, power. The truth wasn't her burden now. It was her weapon. As she stepped out of the office, her phone buzzed again. Her stomach tightened, but it wasn't Jason. It was Chloe. "He knows I talked. He's furious. He's coming after me next." Emily read the message twice before replying. "You're safe. I won't let him hurt you." Her father glanced at her, surprised. Emily didn't explain. She didn't need to. She understood something now. Women weren't meant to fight each other. They were meant to stand together against the men who tried to break them. Emily placed a hand on her belly and whispered, "This ends with me, right here." The courtroom for the final hearing was larger than the previous one. High ceilings, echoing footsteps, rows of wooden benches polished smooth by years of tension and testimony. Emily walked in with her father and Marlene, her breath steady, her chin lifted, her swollen belly supported by a soft maternity belt beneath her dress. Noah toddled beside her, holding Robert's hand, wide-eyed at the unfamiliar space. This time, Emily didn't feel small. She didn't feel fragile. She felt ready. She felt like a woman stepping into the moment she had fought her way toward piece by piece. Jason sat at the opposite table, looking nothing like the man who once strutted through their living room bragging about his future. His suit was wrinkled, his hands shook slightly, his eyes were hollow, sunken from sleepless nights. Briggs whispered urgently to him, but Jason barely listened. He couldn't take his eyes off Emily. Not with anger, not with arrogance, with disbelief. How had she gotten this far? How had she beaten him? How had the woman he once called weak become the force standing between him and the life he tried to steal? He looked terrified of the answer. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The air hummed with quiet anticipation. The bailiff handed the judge a thick binder Emily's evidence, the videos, the financial documents, the shredded paper reconstruction, the planned flight, the threats, the identity theft, the investigator's report confirming Jason used Emily's name to funnel stolen money into hidden accounts. Jason's face whitened with every page the judge flipped through. Marlene stood confidently, hands clasped. Briggs sank lower with every minute. The judge finally set the binder down and turned to Jason. "Mr. Carter, do you have anything to say before I make my ruling?" Jason stood shakily. "Your Honor, I never meant to hurt anyone." Emily is exaggerating. She's emotional, pregnant, confused. "I was stressed at work. I made mistakes. But I'm a good father. I love my son." Emily's jaw tightened. The judge cut in sharply. "You threw your pregnant wife and infant child into the cold. You attempted to flee the country using stolen funds. You endangered your family physically, emotionally, and financially." Jason opened his mouth, but the judge continued. "And you attempted to frame Mrs. Carter for your crimes. Do not speak to me about loving your child." Silence fell heavy. The judge turned to Emily, her voice softening. "Mrs. Carter, your strength throughout this process has been commendable. You protected your child while navigating extraordinary danger. Today, this court will ensure that protection continues." Emily felt her throat tighten. Her father squeezed her shoulder. The judge lifted the final document and read clearly, "Emily Carter is granted full legal and physical custody of both children indefinitely. Mr. Carter is restricted to supervised visitation only, pending completion of psychological evaluation and compliance with all criminal investigations." Jason staggered into his chair, breathing erratic, as if the walls were closing in. The judge wasn't finished. "Furthermore, Mr. Carter, you will provide financial restitution for the funds obtained through fraud. You are barred from leaving the state. You are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Carter or her family outside of legal channels. Violations will result in immediate arrest. Jason collapsed forward, head in his hands. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't smile. But inside her, a quiet, powerful justice settled into place, the justice she fought for, bled for, survived for. As the judge dismissed the court, Marlene whispered, "You won, Emily." She shook her head gently. "No. I protected my children." And she had. 3 years later, the New Jersey winter looked nothing like the night Emily had once stood barefoot on a freezing porch, clutching Noah and shaking under the weight of betrayal. Tonight, gentle snowflakes drifted across the Manhattan skyline, softening the bright edges of the city. From the balcony of her warm apartment overlooking Central Park, Emily watched her 2 boys, Noah, now 4, and little Leo toddling behind him, decorate a small tabletop Christmas tree with paper stars they had made earlier. Their laughter filled the space like music, light and pure. Emily touched her growing joy, the quiet kind that comes only after surviving storms. Inside, warm lights glowed across the living room. A framed photo hung on the wall. Emily in a simple cream dress, hair swept back, holding a bouquet of white peonies. Beside her stood Daniel Hayes, steady, kind-eyed, the man who had held her heart with gentle hands instead of fists. Their wedding had been small, intimate, on a breezy afternoon by San Francisco Bay. No fancy show, no dramatic vows, just 2 people choosing healing over hurt, choosing partnership over pain. Emily had walked toward him barefoot in a soft satin dress, holding Noah's hand, Leo carried by her father. Now, Daniel stepped onto the balcony carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "The stars are crooked again," he teased, nudging her shoulder gently. Emily laughed, the kind of laugh she once thought she'd never make again. "They're perfect," she replied. "Everything is perfect." Daniel wrapped an arm around her. "You did all this, Em. You built this life." She leaned into him, warmth spreading across her chest. "We built it together." She meant it. Daniel had never tried to replace her strength with his, only to stand beside it. He had been patient while she rebuilt her confidence, steady while she overcame her fear. Her father arrived a few minutes later, carrying bags of gifts and muttering about traffic with a smile he no longer bothered to hide. He knelt on the floor, letting the boys tackle him with giggles. "Grandpa, Grandpa!" Noah yelled, climbing onto his back. Robert pretended to collapse dramatically, and the boys squealed with triumph. Emily stood there watching, her heart swelling at a sight she once feared she'd never see: a whole, healthy family. A safe home. A place where her children could grow with love instead of fear. A place where she could breathe without looking over her shoulder. Every now and then, Emily wondered about Jason. She heard he was living alone in a tiny rental on the outskirts of town. His job gone, his reputation ruined, his friends scattered. He saw the boys only under supervision at a community center, and even then, he struggled to look her in the eye. She didn't hate him anymore. She didn't forgive him either. She simply released him, let the consequences he created settle on his own shoulders. Life had dealt him the exact weight he once tried to drop onto hers. Justice had come full circle without her lifting a hand. As the boys finished decorating, Daniel dimmed the lights. The room glowed softly with the tiny tree, the city shimmering beyond the windows. Emily gathered her sons into her arms and whispered, "You're safe, you're loved, and Mommy will always choose you." Daniel kissed her forehead. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, and for the first time since that night on the frozen porch, Emily allowed herself to feel wholly, completely healed. She survived, she rebuilt, she rose, and she found a love, family, and romantic that honored her strength instead of exploiting her softness. She had finally, undeniably won. So that's how the story ends, my wonderful friends. And if you're still here with me right now, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength. Maybe it whispered a truth you needed to hear. Or maybe it showed you that healing is possible, no matter how heavy the past feels. The biggest lesson from Emily's journey is simple but powerful. You are not defined by what breaks you, only by how you rise after it. Like Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Pain can be a wall, yes, but it can also be a doorway. Emily's courage teaches us that setting boundaries is not selfish, starting over is not failure, and choosing peace is an act of bravery. And most of all, you deserve a life where love feels safe, steady, and kind, not something you must survive. If this story gave you strength, or even just one moment of clarity, I invite you to stay with us. Please like, share, and subscribe so our small community of resilient souls can continue growing. You matter. Your healing matters. And you're never as alone as you think.